So I'm going to bid normal for some reason, and I'm going to have my druid bid off spec. So now if I left click on Shadowmourn's auction here, we get a new tab for Shadowmourn. You can see it's selected, and now this is showing me all the bidders for that item. So there's two bids. Koldam has bid normal bid type with his current item of Bonebreaker Scepter, and Koldan has bid an off-spec bid, current item Midnight Sun. And again, nobody has voted, so I'm going to vote for myself, and I'm going to have my druid vote for himself. So now, one player out of two possibles voted for Koldam, and one player has voted for Koldan. But we can also see now that Koldam has won one item in this raid. It was an off-spec item, and you'll see a pop-up, and it looks like the background frame for that pop-up is actually not scaling. I mentioned I scaled this window up for this video. Unfortunately, these, the foreground icons are not scaling, but the background is, so it looks a little funny. But normally you just have it normal scale, so it would be okay. In any event, you'll get this pop-up if you mouse over items 1, and it will show you all the items that players won during this raid. So Koldam won this Blood-Scored Carapace as an off-spec, and so because of that, you know, maybe people would be more apt to vote for the other guy because he hasn't won anything yet or something. So for now though, since this is a main spec item, I'm going to vote for Koldam, or excuse me, I'm going to select him as the winner. So if you are the raid leader, the only person that can select winners if there's multiple votes, multiple bids for an item is the raid leader. All the other loot council members just get a vote or cancel vote option. And they get one vote per auction, so they can vote for one person only. So in this case we've got an even vote, but generally in our raids, if people need an item for their normal set, you know, their normal role, they'll win over people with an off-spec. So as the raid leader, I get winner options now that the auction is closed, so I'm going to select Koldam as the winner. And now you can see his items 1 has been updated. Now he's got one normal win and one off-spec win. You can see this green sort of tinted Shadowmourn icon shows me that it was a normal icon, or normal win. And the yellow tint shows this Carapace was an off-spec win. So this is really the basics of the bid window. And these tabs at the top, if you left click, you can select between them. So each tab indicates an auction, and it shows you the item. And then far left is the auctions tab. You can get back to the main auctions window here. If you want to close a tab, you don't need to use it anymore. You can right click, and that will close it out. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with the blade score as well. And as soon as you close all the tabs, then you're back to the auctions tab automatically. So this actually will disappear, but you'll be looking at auctions. So here we go, we're back at auctions. And you can see both auctions so far, I've won them. So let's go ahead and create another auction. And I'm going to bid Rot, even though it's a wand. Druid's going to bid off-spec, even though he can't use it either. And we're going to both vote for Koldan. So you can see he has both votes now. So chances are he should be awarded this item. Now, by default, if there's only one person that's bid, so I'm going to cancel my bid because I realize it's a wand, I don't want it. Now I go back into the auction. There's only one person that's actually bid. So by default, when an auction ends, which it just did there, if only one player has actually bid, they're automatically declared the winner. And that just saves time so that the raid leader doesn't have to actually manually assign them as the winner. So you can see down here it says auction winner declared Koldam, he got this item. And then back in the auctions window, you can see this was the winner. So that's the bid window, and pretty easy to use. Just remember, right click tabs to close them, left click to select everything else. So now I'm going to go into a little bit more details about how to set up kAuction for your raid. This is mostly for raid leaders. So if you open up the options here, which I did with KA space UI, the main thing you'll see is the admin tab here, and as I mentioned, you can start and stop the raid manually, but I have one going so I don't need to. The thing you'll see is a version check, so I'm going to hit that, and this will just send out a query to all the raid members to see what version they're running, if they're up to date. And after a while it will come back and it shows whether people are up to date or not. So this is showing all users are compatible, and that's great. I'm going to go ahead and splice in here a short clip to show you what you see as a raid member if you are out of date when you join a raid. Alright, so here's an example of having an incompatible version of kAuction. If you get an invite to a raid with a user, so I'm going to invite myself here. So as soon as you join the raid, the version is checked, and as you can see there, if your version is out of date, you get a little warning. So this basically is telling you that the version you have is 9221, the server version is 9224, and 9224 is also the required version. So it just basically tells you, you know, you can go update it if needed. Okay, so that's the version check out of the way. Now we get into the admin options. So these are all for raid leaders only. Client players don't really need to worry about it. So the auctions is where you determine how auctions are displayed and how they're created. So the first thing is the most important, the auction type. This just determines how auctions are actually displayed and whether they're loot council or random. So by default it's loot council, that's what we use primarily. And as I mentioned, this is just a system where particular players that are considered loot council members are allowed to vote, as I showed you before. And they will get a vote option if they're a valid loot council member. You can also use random, and random is very similar to if you just had it on, you know, say group loot or need before greed, and people were rolling with the in-game UI. The difference is kAuction still allows you to use this interface, export the information, and it will do the rolling automatically. So anyone that bids is automatically entered for an item, and they will roll for it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you an auction for that. Let me lower the duration here again. So we got it set to random, so let's make another Shadowmourne auction. And I'm going to bid normal, and Druid will bid off-spec, and we'll wait for that to end. If I left-click on the bids window, you can see this looks like slightly different. Now there's no voting information, and there's no vote button, because this is a random auction. So all that means is we get to see who bid, the item they're replacing, and all that good stuff. Once the auction is complete, kAuction will automatically roll for those players and determine the roll up to a maximum of this number, so up to 100 right now, and then the highest roll of course wins. Now a few important details here. kAuction has a priority built into random auctions based on the bid type. So you may see here, this is the roll. I rolled a 1, and my Druid rolled a 59. However, I won the item. So the reason for that is because I bid as a normal bid, whereas the Druid bid off-spec. So in kAuction, under random rules, anyone that bids normal is considered higher priority than anyone that bids off-spec, and anyone that bids off-spec is higher priority than anyone that bids a rot. So in this case there was only 2 people, and Kuldon was an off-spec, so as long as one person was normal, which I was, it doesn't matter what I rolled, I would win.